Tell me all the things you want from me. Is it love or is it fame? You can't run and you can't hide, but you can't bear the strain. Little diamonds in the rough. Your eyes are wide, you want to scream. Will this madness end? Will your head look down this girl? Whoa, whoa. Now tell me all the things that love can be. Is it pleasure? Is it pain? You can't run and you can't hide, but you won't make the grade. On your knees is just as tough. It owns your mind, you can't break free. When will this madness end? Where your head will die, this girl.
Hello and welcome to Paranormal Chronicles. I'm your host, Joe Miranda. Today's episode is Country Road. Before we get into this episode, I just want to make it very clear that I'm a flawed man and I'm a sinner. I give God all the glory. I believe Jesus Christ is my Savior, and I renounce Satan. However, I never underestimate his ability to blind minds, eyes, ears, and hearts here on earth. With that said, let's dive into it. First off, I want to say that I'm very happy to be able to do this episode. The negative powers to be out there, well, they didn't want me to make this episode. It took me 5 hours to get to this point, even though I had everything prepped first thing in the morning. But God takes lemons and makes lemonade. So we're here. We're doing it. Let's talk. Let's talk about some amazing things that bore out through incredibly bad times for a very dear high school friend of mine. January 29th, 2013, I was in Berks County, Pennsylvania, to visit that dear friend. His wife had left him 4 months prior to that. And the basis of this episode was what happened when we were coming home from the holistic store that I had purchased some white sage from. I had planned on cleansing his house, his father's house, the family vehicles, because there was an evil that to me felt like it proliferated everything in and around that family. His wife had left him after about 13 years of marriage. She thought it would be especially stinging to leave him on his birthday, even though they had been intimate the night before. She left a note after 13 years of marriage stating that she wasn't in love with him anymore. This man had taken her two kids in from a previous relationship and raised them as his own. He had two children of his own from another relationship. One of the things that really struck me and really showed his investment in them was it was a family tradition to mark the growth of the children. It's pretty neat to see something like that. You know, you see a kid's name now. In this case, he put it on the basement door. Yeah, there's his two kids' names there, along with her two kids when they came into the fold, and that'll show you the type of investment that he had made in her children. That again, he looked at as his own. That takes a special kind of evil to plan out something like that. I mean, down to the detail, leaving him on his birthday with no clue to leave a note to share intimacy with him the night before, come home to a note and an empty house. I don't think at the time he knew just how deep, you know, her evil had transcended. She had actually taken out a credit card in his name. She perpetrated credit card fraud by putting a credit card in his name, which she forged the signature and ran up $25,000 in debt. He couldn't afford $25,000 in credit card charges. But she had planned it that when they split up the assets, that he kept the house, but in the event that he lost the house, any other debts that were incurred would go back on him. Well, he didn't find out till that credit card fraud until the divorce decree was signed or the divorce papers were signed. So she even said to him, she was coming back and forth to pick up items that she had left behind that she planned on destroying him financially. And he didn't know where all this was coming from. But I can promise you it was coming from a place of evil. That's just evil to do something like that. Now, we talk a lot, or I should say I talk a lot about demonic interference and demonic possession when I consult with people. And it's a very real thing. I just don't know where she picked it up. But she picked it up somewhere along the line. Now, my friend, he grew up in the church. I promise you, from the moment his mother got back on her feet after giving birth to him, she was bringing him to church every Sunday. They went to church every single Sunday. And they believed in the writings in the Bible. They were good people. They were really good people, and I was fortunate enough to know his parents. I was blessed to know them. The world was a better place with them in it. My friend is a good man. He's a far better man than I am. He would give you the shirt off his back, and he never met a stranger. But my friend had fallen away from the light. I could sense it. And I'd asked him where, because I'd noticed some things and noticed that he fell away from the church as well. But he had fallen away from the light hard. And I asked him, I said, when we talked, what's going on with you? What's happening? And he said that when his mother passed away in 2001 from cancer, he asked God, how can you how could you let a woman who was so devoted to the church and so pious, how could you let her suffer so much? He claimed he never got an answer or never heard an answer. He also fell away from the church because he saw some things about the church that disillusioned him, in particularly the way some of the members were treating the church as a business rather than a place of worship. And that bothered him quite a bit as well. Now, I remember in 2011, I came back to visit my friend, and I remember he and his wife taking me out to a restaurant, and seeing him in person, I noticed a big change too. There was a lot of that light that I knew from him that seemed to be fading away. Wasn't the same guy. And I remember we were in his vehicle leaving a restaurant that we had had dinner at, and I said a few things, and the way he answered, I just I didn't realize it was the Watchers at the time, but I remember hearing, he'll come back to God when he's humbled. And I remember sharing that with him. And he kind of chuckled and he said, "Well, we'll see." That wasn't like my friend to be so cavalier about something like that. And I do remember looking at his wife. I was sitting in the back seat, but I remember looking at his wife now, knowing what I know now. That was the Watchers. And she was going to be the one who humbled him. Now we fast forward to January 2013, and we're coming back from the holistic store, driving to my friend's house, and I heard this voice say, "You got to stop and get some matches." Okay. Got to burn some sage. So I told my friend to pull over at a gas station before we headed up over the hill to his house because there were no stores. This is in the middle of the country, so there were no stores on the way back to his home. So we stopped and got some matches, and a little bit further up the road, I get this impression to start burning sage inside the car. Now that kind of made sense because they used the vehicle. It was I believe a Subaru. They used it to they used it quite a bit together, and of course the energy was just so horrible, so bad. So I started burning sage. And and then I get this impression to tell my friend to renounce Satan. You know, I said to my friend, I said, renounce Satan. I said his name, of course. Renounce Satan. And he looked over at me and he tried to speak, but he couldn't. That voice came through again, telling him to renounce Satan. I told him again. I said, hey, you need to renounce Satan. Now, I knew my friend had turned or was becoming an atheist. And I I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know if he was just refusing to say it or he couldn't say it. Again, the voice came through, telling him to renounce Satan. And at about that point, there was this squeaky voice and his face turned like a beet red and his eyes started bugging out of his head. Now, you got to remember, we're cruising down this country road at about 45 or 50 miles an hour. And my friend, I don't know what's going to happen to him. I don't know if he's going to pass out. I don't know if he's having a heart attack, but I was pretty worried and I thought for sure, something's going to happen to my friend and we're going to get killed when we plow into a 60-foot oak tree at 60 miles an hour because the speed started picking up in the car. Again, the voice came through, telling him to renounce Satan. So again, I told him, you need to renounce Satan. And he looked over at me and it came through like a squeaky voice, a very weak. I renounce Satan. And on the other end of that, they're like, no. Have him say it again and louder. So I looked over at him. I said, hey, man, renounce Satan, and I want you to push through it. I want to hear it loud. And he was finally able to say, I renounce Satan. Just like that. color started coming back in his face. That that look that was on his face was gone. His eyes weren't bugging out of his head anymore. You know, I called and talked to him about a week ago in preparation for this episode. And I asked him, I said, do you remember what happened? Oh, and he said, oh, yeah, because I'll never forget that. He remembered everything vividly. And I asked him, I said, well, what was it? What was it like? I said, it looked like you were being choked out. He goes, yeah. It felt as though somebody had grabbed me by the throat and was choking me. And I said, well, what went through your mind? He goes, well, I mean, I was scared. Fear was on my mind. And then panic, because I'd never had something like that happen to me before. And I said, well, what about afterwards? He goes, I was fine. What's interesting about this whole episode as it's happening is that and I put it in my journal, at 10:18 in the morning, I called Craig Perry and introduced him to my friend. And then at 1:18 in the afternoon, East Coast time, that's when this episode took place. 2 minutes after this episode, Craig Perry calls me up asking if everything was okay. That was another thing that my friend has never forgotten. And he said to me, he goes, I have no idea how that happened on top of everything else, how he knew to call and ask if everything was okay. Well, I mean, Craig Perry's done that to me a number of times. It's pretty crazy. But, you know, God is great. God has his reasons. You know, that episode, that was eye-opening for me. There are a lot of things that happen on this earth that we can't explain. And that was life-changing for him. Now, it didn't happen right away, but it was life-changing for him. You know, I'm happy to report that his ex-wife's credit card fraud was found out before it affected him and had him lose his house, and she ended up taking responsibility for it. He had a friend that worked for the state police that confronted her about it and told her that she could get in a lot of trouble. In fact, she could be looking at prison time for what she did. So she took on the credit card debt before he lost the house. I'm happy to report that he's happily remarried to a wonderful woman. And Very happy for my friend that he found somebody to share his life with. And I'm happy to report he's come back to the light. And to think we were just cruising down country road.